This is Kevin from Passion for the Word. I just want to say thank you to those that have supported our ministry by sharing our videos and with words of encouragement. I can't tell you how much it means to us. At this stage of the game, sharing our videos is probably second only to prayer for helping us get the message out. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our channel. If you'd like me to come speak at your church or your gathering, or if you have any questions, at the end of the video, we'll be putting up the email, send us a video. Just let us know what you think of what we're doing. Also, if you were blessed by this video, please share it with as many as you can. And as always, please pray for this ministry that we do that which is pleasing to God. The video I'm doing today is a message I first heard from my personal favorite teacher, a man by the name of Chuck Missler. He passed away in May of 2018, but this story I'm going to tell, or this study I'm going to do, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I hope it does the same for you. It's about the appearance of Jesus. Mary Magdalene was the first person to see Jesus after the resurrection. In John's account, Mary is weeping at the tomb when she sees him, but she doesn't recognize him. She thinks he might be the gardener. Why doesn't she recognize him until he calls out her name? Now, granted, it could be that she can't see him through the tears, but I think there might be more to it than that. We're told in Luke chapter 24, the tale of the road to Emmaus, where Jesus is walking with two of his followers, Cleopas and I suspect his wife Mary. They're walking for roughly 7 miles. But on that entire 7-mile passage, they don't realize who they're talking to. Jesus walks up to them and says, "What manner of communication?" Because they're talking in a somber tone. They're just, they're very, very sad. You can just tell. So Jesus walks up to them and says, "What manner of communications are these that ye have one to another, as ye walk and are sad?" And Cleopas responds with, "Art thou only a stranger in Jerusalem, and hast not known the things which are come to pass there in these days?" They seem to have no clue who they're talking to. I think Jesus had a sense of humor, and I think his response, he had to be smiling inside when he, knowing what they're talking about, he looks at them and says, "What things?" Well, they then proceed to tell Jesus all about what's just happened to him, about the crucifixion, about the body missing, and they're clueless about who they're talking to. And Jesus responds, after they've told him all about all the things that have happened to him. Jesus responds with, "O fools, and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken, ought not Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?" After saying this to them, he gives them a lesson in the third person. He refers to Jesus as somebody else, and he tells them all of the stories, and just about all the stories in the Old Testament about him. He goes over, through the prophets and all this. The entire time, they have no clue who they're talking to. That is, until they invite him to break bread with them. Jesus, outside of the cultural standard, would be that the person whose home that they're at would break the bread. That'd be Cleopas. But Jesus takes the bread, which would be highly unusual. And when he breaks the bread, they figure out who he is. I suspect it's because they see, the Bible doesn't tell us, but I suspect it's because they see the nail marks. As soon as they recognize him, he's out of there. Later that night in the upper room when Jesus makes his appearance, not all the disciples were in there, but most of them. But when they saw him, they were terrified. Why is that? Then there's the episode mentioned in John 21, where Peter and John are fishing. And Jesus yells from the shore to cast their net to the right side. After they caught nothing all night, the net becomes so full of fish that they can't bring it into the boat. They can't draw it in. That's when John realizes who's on the shore. Now, he doesn't recognize him by sight. He recognizes him by the situation. And he turns to Peter and says, "It is the Lord." Now, the Bible tells us that they were 200 cubits from shore. Now, with the standard cubit being 18 inches, that means they were 300 feet from the shore, or a football field away. And it doesn't say how far off the shore Jesus was, but assume he's close. That's still 300 feet. They recognized Jesus not with their eyes, but by this situation. Well, Peter jumps in, and he swims to shore, lets the rest of them bring the boat in, dragging the net behind him because they can't pull it in. Jesus says, "Bring the fish, which ye have now caught." Peter runs down there and draws the net in. Now, there's a lesson right there, a sermon right there. When Jesus tells you to do something, you can do something that 7 men can't do, but that's another rabbit hole to chase. There's something strange that happens in this section, though. While they're there, John mentions something that I think it brings up some questions. Jesus says unto them, "Come and dine." And none of the disciples durst ask him, "Who art thou?" knowing that it was the Lord. And that's a strange statement. It's a kind of statement that creates questions as opposed to answering them. An example would be if my wife and I were on our way somewhere for the evening, maybe for the weekend, and Trina turns to me and says, "Did you lock the door?" And I said, "I'm sure I did." That doesn't offer a lot of confidence. That's the kind of answer that might get us to turn around and come back and check. Now, if I said, "Yes," or "I did," but to say, "I'm sure I did," just kind of creates some doubt. And as far as I'm concerned, none durst ask him, "Who art thou?" falls under the same umbrella. Now, in Isaiah 52:14, it says, and these are all prophecies of the crucifixion. We'll back up here before we go to the verse. Jesus' death was prophesied through as crucifixion 700 years before crucifixion was even invented. Now, this is one of the amazing things about the Bible. The prophecies in the Bible aren't necessarily for us to predict the future, as to recognize at this time that what was said back then was known. When you look at these prophecies, you would never read these prophecies 700 years before the crucifixion took place and recognize a crucifixion in it. But knowing what we know now, we can look at these and say, recognize the amazing detail. And that's one of the things. On one hand, the prophecies are incredibly vague, but on the other hand, there's incredible detail. And only God could do something like that. But the point we're going to be making here is that the torture that Jesus underwent was greater, far greater than that shown in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. It says, "As many were astonished at his visage," or his appearance, "was so marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of men." Now, I think this is saying that he was scarred or beaten so bad, and his face mutilated, I think more than any man's had been. In verse 50 and 6 of Isaiah, it says, "I gave my back to the smiters, and my cheeks to them that plucked off the hair. I hid not my face from shame and spitting." I think this is saying they literally ripped the beard off of his face. Now, have you ever known someone that made a radical change in their appearance? They cut their hair really short, changed the color, shaved off a beard, someone that you've always known to have a beard. And someone that you know very well, suddenly you don't quite recognize them. The sudden change makes them unfamiliar to you. Well, perhaps this is why Mary and the others did not recognize Jesus. What would having a beard ripped off your face do to the skin left behind? Well, you know he still carried the scars, and the marks left by the nail, and the piercing in the side. We know he still had those because he told Thomas to put his finger in them. There's no reason to believe that the other scars wouldn't have been there also. This brings up another question. Does Jesus still bear the marks? In the book of Revelation, which is of things yet to happen, we have in chapter 5, verses 1 through 3 here, we have, "And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof. And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much. Now this is John. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book, and to loose the 7 seals thereon. Well, who's the Lion of the tribe of Judah? Who's the Root of David? That's Jesus. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne, and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain. Now, it's not a mistake that the lamb is capitalized. It should be that way in your Bible also. That's Jesus, as it had been slain. This is Jesus in the future. It appears that he may still bear his marks. Now, there's a story about a badly disfigured woman that had a little girl. When the little girl went to school, the kids would make fun of her because of the way her mother looked. She became embarrassed and would cry because of the taunts from the other kids. One day, the little girl asked her mother about her appearance. Her mother told her, when you were just a baby, our home caught on fire, and you were trapped inside. I was able to save you, but in doing so became badly burned and badly scarred. From that moment on, the little girl was never embarrassed of her mother's appearance. From that moment on, every time the little girl looked at her mom, she didn't see the scars. She saw just how much she was loved. What was it that held Jesus to the cross? It wasn't the nails. It was the strength of his love. They nailed him to a cross of wood, but he made the hill upon which it stood. I suspect that the only man-made things that we'll see in heaven will be the scars on Jesus. I suspect that you and I will spend an eternity discovering just what it really cost him that you and I might be there with him in heaven. What if, when we see Jesus face to face for the first time, we're just like that little girl, and we end up seeing just how much we are loved? Thank you, and God bless.